A key thing a lot of people don't understand is just because there's no study or data about something doesn't mean it's not true or there's not an issue happening. Where's the study that says when you give people quercetin, if they have these genetic mutations, they're going to have more anxiety than someone that doesn't? The studies don't exist. Where's the financial incentive to figure out which types of people are going to respond and have a natural supplement no one could patent and sell for a massive markup?
Welcome to the podcast, Stuff Your Doctor Should Know. Okay, yeah, I'm multitasking right now, but I just wanted to say hello. Welcome back. I'm coming to you alive from deep inside your large intestine. Isn't it funny how, like, Amazon packages, it's just like, I go through these weird phases of like, why am I part of the Amazon thing? Why am I ordering things? And then I'm like, because this is so awesome. Like, you stick it in the freezer and then you stick it on your face and it just like soothes your brain and your eyes and potentially brings down swelling in your eyeballs. And Amazon, like, so cheap, probably made in China. Like, I feel super bad about that sometimes, but then I'm like, this is awesome. And I bought this other thing, which I wish I could show you. It's one of, like these gusha or whatever they're called, like rollers for your skin. It's like that, but oh, I have to show you. It's like you stick it in the freezer and then it's got two sides and it's got like a roller thing on. Well, one has like three indentations. It's like a little roller and it's got like three indentations. And the other one has one indentation so that you can like run it underneath your chin or underneath your eyes or whatever. I was doing my lymph. So I was doing the big six, right? You guys know the big six, Dr. Perry Nicholson, lymph master extraordinaire. Well, in my mini course, the mini detox essentials course, we go through that and I give you a whole list of the big six and how to move your lymph. This thing is so perfect for lymph movage. It's like you can use it on all the big six. And I'm not going to tell you what those big six are. You should already know if you took the mini course, which is only $25. We had a giveaway. We gave away 3 spots on the advanced detox essentials, which is $275. And currently it is 30% off. Okay, so if you've been wanting to take it, now's the time to take it. If you go to healthygutgirl.com, you're going to click on the courses and you'll see what it entails. It's amazing. In fact, today's podcast guest is Tyler Pansner, pharmacologist, PhD. He is incredible. I've had him on before. He changed my life, genuinely changed my life. I learned things from him about my genetics and that I would not it was worth every penny. Let me put it that way. It's an investment in your life, in your health, because you learn, and he's going to talk all about it, about the different things that might be holding you back with your health that you don't even realize are going on. And so that is who's on today. And I'm super excited. He's really good. He's well spoken. He's fun to have on. You know what else I got from Amazon? I got this. I don't want to open it and make too much noise because it'll take a second. But this is called the original Prise de Mousse. Prise de Mousse. Saccharomyces cerevisiae exbollensis. It's EC1118. It is a champagne yeast, basically. And I got it because for my birthday, which was on Thanksgiving this year, I turned 56. And my neighbor gave me a SCOBY. Do you know what a SCOBY is? It is the mother that you make kombucha from. So it's the microbial colony. It looks like a spongy piece of mucus. And you make it using black tea and it ferments. And then you can share that mother with, it's like when you buy apple cider vinegar and it's got that weird little mucusy thing floating on the bottom. That is the mother. That's the bacterial source that helps to ferment the kombucha or whatever it is you're making. And so she gave me one, and I want to try my hand at making hard kombucha. Hard kombucha has an alcohol content in it, whereas regular kombucha does too, but it's extremely little. But this is specifically to make champagne. And so I'm going to use this to then make a hard kombucha. And we were thinking of making a passion fruit kombucha, my neighbor and I. So we're just trying our hand. I have some really handy neighbors who are into crafting and thrifting and baking and planting, and I love it. It's so de-stressing for me to do these things, including I just painted my bedroom, and that felt really good just to start some new stuff for the new year. Anyway, I'm just yammering and yammering. So go ahead and take out your notebook because he's going to talk a lot about different genes. And in the show notes, you will see his survival guide to supplements, to taking supplements. And also, yeah, reach out to him and see if it might be something that's right for you to invest in your health, especially if you know you have genetic variants and if you know you already have certain genetic variants because you have your data, you have like your 23andMe, or you did something else, some other testing for your genetic variants. That information you would go to him with, and he will expertly decode it for you and tell you what your most important things that you have to keep an eye on and how to support those. So enjoy Dr. Tyler Pamsner. First of all, I want everybody to know that out of everything I've done, I'm going to be 50. I just turned 56. Oh my God. And I have
Well,
done,
you're doing something right for 56. I'll give you that.
well, I'll tell you, one of the things is that when I discovered what you taught me, and this, what you found from my genetic data. And I struggled with so many different things my whole life, and I was always working on myself. So I had that benefit, which was cool, and that education. But ultimately, there were so many blockages, and I always felt like a sensitive person. Oh, I'm too sensitive for this and for that. And when I take this, it's supposed to be good for me, but I feel like shit. And so why is this happening? And I'm so unique. I'm different, And so that doesn't apply to me, And when I still was in that space, and I had sewn a lot of things together. But when I met you and we had our podcast, and then you did my data, I was just blown away. So you have done probably the most for my health of anybody that I have ever
Oh,
met.
you're giving me goosebumps now.
It's
Thank you.
true.
Yeah.
And if you saw the repertoire of people
Yeah.
that I've worked with and my mentors, you would even get more goosebumps because it
Yeah.
is important. And there are these little things, that can make all the difference in the world because we are unique. It doesn't make it like we can't be helped. It just means it's good to know what those unique
Yeah.
things are so we can navigate through that. So let's start first of all with this is genetics. I want to kind of focus in on like genetics and supplements.
Yeah.
For people who don't understand genetics, why do certain supplements work beautifully for some but backfire for others?
It all comes down to understanding the mechanisms of action. So that's a pharmacology term that pharmacists or pharmacologists or doctors are pretty familiar with. And it's basically, how does this nutrient, how does this drug, how does this mineral, how does it do things in your body? So I like to give two examples. So one, I like to give the Swiss Army knife example. So you may think you're taking, let's just take vitamin C. You're taking vitamin C for your immune health. There's data that it can help with that. Let's call that the switchblade of the Swiss Army knife. But what else can vitamin C do? Vitamin C can shift the pH of urine and potentially make kidney stones worse. So we'll call that let's call that the corkscrew. Well, actually, no, let me think about that. Let's scrap that's not something you would want. Actually, we'll do a different one actually. So instead of the vitamin C, because no one would do that and pick the screwdriver for the oxalate. Let's take let's take quercetin's one I talk about a lot. You may think you're taking quercetin for your allergies, for your histamine, which it does help stabilize mast cells. We'll call that the switchblade. Then let's say the screwdriver. Quercetin also can act as a senolytic, meaning it has good data that it can help remove these zombie cells, a lot of influencers call them, which has merit. So when we get old, these cells can get old and basically tired and stop growing and replicating and release inflammatory things into your bloodstream and contribute to aging. So quercetin can help remove those. Okay, that's the screwdriver. That's great. Awesome. People will take quercetin and think it's good for those things, which it can be. But what else does quercetin do? Quercetin is also an iron chelator. So let's call that the bottle opener on the Swiss Army knife, right? It also slows down something called the MAOA gene or enzyme. This is what breaks down neurotransmitters in the brain. So serotonin, dopamine, noradrenaline, and adrenaline, the fight or flight neurotransmitter. So when I look at that, okay, are you someone with high histamine that has some senolytic cells in your body, that has high iron, and someone that's not sensitive to excess neurotransmitters? You see, that would be the ideal person to take quercetin. Me personally, my MAOA gene, it's mutated. If I take quercetin, I get very, very anxious, overstimulated, racing thoughts. Sometimes my heart will race. I see a lot of people get this. That's because I don't handle neurotransmitters very well, so I'm sensitive. Or let's just say if someone has anemia or if they have low iron or if they don't really eat much iron in their diet. So their iron may look okay, they don't eat a lot of red meat or something like that. Then the quercetin can potentially cause anemia or make anemia worse. So you see, you need to understand these angles of the Swiss Army knife, or another way I like to word it is the iceberg effect. So you think you're getting above the water of the iceberg, right? There's a lot underneath the water you don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
You think you're getting the antihistamine effects, the anti-aging effects. But what's underneath? It can lower iron, it can raise adrenaline. Now, I actually have, and we could put a link in there. I have a free survival guide to natural supplements. Happy free resource for you guys listening to check out, kind of going more into this iceberg effect. And this really is the number one issue I see people make regarding supplements. It's not knowing what's underneath the water. And you cannot count on the manufacturers of supplements to disclose these. A lot of them don't even know all the mechanisms because they're in studies. They're going to put brain fog. They want you, the consumer, to see a word and identify with it, drive an emotion, and make you buy it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? They are businesses at the end of the day, but what company on their quercetin bottle would put can lower iron or can raise adrenaline? Because
and they
another
don't have
thing,
to, right? They're not required.
oh
to do
no,
such
they don't
things.
have to at all. But here's the thing too. It comes down to, what's evidence based? What does the evidence say? A lot of what I do isn't thoroughly proven with evidence. What I mean by that is we know that quercetin blocks that MAOA gene actually much stronger than pretty much any natural supplement on the market.
Wow.
Very, very strong MAOA inhibitor. Methylene blue can be even stronger, so it can have similar overstimulation effects. But we know that it does that strongly relative to a lot of other natural supplements and polyphenols and flavonoids. We know people with mutations in that gene are more prone to anxiety. They're more prone to aggression. They're more prone to be violent criminals. Doesn't guarantee it, of course. But where's the study that says when you give people quercetin, if they have these genetic mutations, they're going to have more anxiety than someone that doesn't? The studies don't exist. It's very nuanced. Where's the financial incentive to figure out which types of people are going to respond and have some anxiety or a little bit of race heart rate or a little bit of sleep issues for a natural supplement no one could patent and sell for a massive markup? So I read between the lines with a lot of what I do. And to be honest with you, it started with myself, me being a very sensitive person, realizing, connecting the dots with my own body, with my background. But then after working with hundreds of people or on my comments on my post. I'll make a post about this with quercetin. Some of the comments say, this is fear mongering. This doesn't matter. What are you talking about? But then you'll see dozens of other people saying, oh my God, it ruined my day. Thank you. I removed it. It changed my life. I was so overstimulated.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are experiencing these same things. But for wide scale adoption now, when everyone wants the perfect randomized controlled trial for everything, a key thing a lot of people don't understand is just because there's no study or data about something doesn't mean it's not true or there's not an issue happening, because these studies, they take a random group of people and give them that supplement. But are you that person in that study? What other supplements are you taking?
Okay, you said something, you said mutation. You didn't say variant. So isn't there a difference? Isn't a mutation more like more dire with somebody, like when you have a mutant gene or mutant variant, a mutant
Yeah,
variation?
so to be honest, I've been trying to shift my verbiage with that. Um, they can somewhat be used interchangeably, but a mutation is a type of variant.
Okay.
And certain more stringent definitions say something that occurs in, I think it's less than 1% of the population. So I'm trying
Okay.
to break. So when I was initially getting trained and learning this stuff, right, years ago, it was just mutation, but we are trying to shift more towards variant. So you are right on that. A mutation is a variant. What I'm talking about is technically a mutation. It's just kind of how the phrasing has shifted. But
Okay.
yes, these are variants. When people hear
Okay.
mutation, they think more, I have the mutation for Huntington's disease. If I have that gene, I'm guaranteed to get that. A new study just came out, a mutation in I think it's the GRIN2A. It's the NMDA receptor. This has been proven. If you have this, you are like that one gene can give you anxiety or schizophrenia. So that would be like a mutation, right? But
Okay.
you are right. Should tweak that wording a little bit.
Okay. I just want to make sure because
Yeah.
in my course that I was teaching, I kept using the word mutation and I was corrected by ChatGPT of all things.
Yeah.
And then I started digging into it and looking through some other stuff. And I was like, oh, oops, because I've been saying it as well.
Yeah.
But so, okay. So let's just, uh, okay. So the next thing is that what do you think? Because it's really, when you look, it can be overwhelming when you look at all of the different types of variants that people, I mean, we all have so many, and
Yep.
people really look at them like when I'm online and dealing with my group or whatever, people really identify with their variants
Mm-hmm.
as like they're broken. I have this problem. I have this thing. It's this thing that causes me to not be able to break down this or that. And so I can't take this or that. And I'm in another category of like being broken,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas in a way, mutations can certainly be that way. Like if you have some kind of metabolic disorder that you were born with and it's a mutant gene, but if you have like this inability to break down adrenaline that you and I both share, it's so much fun. Um, you're not really broken, right? So how can you? What would you say to people who are like, I've got the MTHFR, I've got both
Oh
SNPs
boy.
of that, I've
Yeah.
got
We
this
could
and
talk
this and
about
this
that
and this.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, like what would you say to them briefly? Like we don't have to get into a big long thing, but
Yeah, I think you also need to think about how your life is set up and what your environment's like. Because if I'm not careful, since I don't break down adrenaline very well at all, I really can feel broken, and I would almost consider myself broken because I get so overwhelmed and freeze and just inundated with fear from that adrenaline. So it also depends on the environment you're in, the people that you're around. So, you know, a lot of these supplements that can affect adrenaline. So I mentioned the methylene blue, the quercetin, rhodiola rosea, fenugreek, berberine, just to name a few. There's dozens of them. If I take those, if I have other B vitamins or if I have some caffeine, um, I cannot tolerate those. And unless I take a bunch of calming supplements to negate it, but at that point, what's that really worth, right?
yeah.
So I wouldn't say it as it depends on how mutated it is. So the MTHFR, I'm so sick of talking about it. We'll talk about it here, but I'm going to make more content. There's just so many pages out there. MTHFR and menopause, MTHR and ADHD, MTHFR and why you have brain fog on Wednesday nights at 4:43 p.m. It's just this crazy stuff that it's all MTHFR. It's a marketing play. But if someone has double mutations in the C677 region, that combination means it only works around 20% as well as it should. So does your gene work 20% or 80%, right? So that being said, people that identify with these genetic mutations, it depends how mutated they are, but it's not, I'm trying to think how to word this. Broken is a very, very strong word, but it can
Hmm.
fundamentally shift on how you live your life, what you put in your body, what you expose yourself to. Anything I do that stimulates or raises adrenaline will be magnified for me, whether it's certain foods that I eat or certain supplements or um, like I can't exercise later in the day or I got to be mindful if I start
Are
getting
you
too
sure we're not
excited about.
twins?
That's why we get along, right? And that
Yeah.
also ties into behavior types as well. Um, you know, these people that are slow metabolizers of adrenaline and dopamine, you can tell by talking to them. At least I can pretty quickly at this point, because the conversation flows. We're very, extroverted slash just conversationalists, right?
Creative and yeah,
Creative as well.
dynamic.
Dopamine directly correlates with creativity, but when you have high dopamine, that also can get converted into adrenaline. So this is what goes back to the, sensitive, anxious artist or creative, right?
Hmm.
Like a lot of highly creative people have mood or mental health disorders because the underpinnings of the creativity, the pros and cons, the double-edged sword to these things. And on the
Hmm.
flip side, you'll see individuals that process adrenaline faster. They're more likely to be in contact sports. There's been some studies on MMA athletes. If you think about,
Mm.
you know, let's just take LeBron James. I don't know his DNA genetic code, but he gets the ball 2 seconds left in the game to shoot. Or just in general, a professional athlete, a basketball player gets that buzzer beater opportunity. Which type of individual will be more likely to perform under pressure? Someone that has lower baseline adrenaline and can clear it more quickly, or someone that does that more slowly? I played basketball. I was not the greatest athlete because I would get in the game and feel all that pressure and feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting. Like we have studies that show this. If you can't break down adrenaline as well, you're more likely to be an MMA athlete. But if you break it down not as well, you're more likely to be in more of the creative side of things. I think it's just so fascinating that these patterns are all around us. They shape who we are. Yet for some reason, well, I guess not for some reason, people think genetics are a bunch of crap because nowadays you have so many people just screaming about MTHFR, trying to sell a bunch of methylfolate, and they give the whole space a bad name. I mean,
Yeah.
when we worked together, you were just mentioning before how it changed your life. The awareness I got around my body changed my life because it needs to be done properly with the proper expertise and education. I don't
Yeah.
want to tell you when I work with someone, I don't tell them you can never have quercetin. You could never have any of these. I want you to be aware that you're more prone to being stimulated from these. But if you want to try it, you can try it. But now, if you feel your heart beating fast, you know what it is. You're
Yeah.
not going to lose your marbles over it.
Yeah.
Also, things like capers have the highest amount of quercetin in them out of any food. So I noticed if I have capers, I feel stimulated. Now, not nearly as much as a pure concentrated quercetin supplement, right? But even certain food, we need to think of the dosages you're getting. So a supplement will be up here, right? Very high. You have capers. Apples have some quercetin, but I feel fine having an apple, right? Because the
Hmm.
dosage comes into play. Now I'm thinking about it. I could go viral as hell if I was like, don't eat apples. They're making you anxious, right? Like I could, but there's nuance here to these things.
Right. Well, that's what's interesting. So I was saying to some friends, they're like, well, why would God design our bodies to have these variants and these mutations? And I always say, I think there's an evolution aspect to this where we adapted
Yep.
somehow. Like I'm a large part of my genes. I'm Hispanic and I'm American Indian. And I was thinking, like in my very distant past, all of my relatives and ancestors, like how could that have benefited them for them to not be able to break down vitamin D? Why would we have evolved to not do that? And maybe it's because we were in the sun so much, we were utilizing it too frequent, too much at once. And so our bodies evolved to not get like overdose with D from being out in the sun constantly, or I don't know, stuff like that. Another thing with the MTHFR, like maybe there's something about access to having so much of methyl B to those vegetables and foods that have
Hmm.
those in them, and maybe our bodies adapted to be like, okay, that's too much. We don't want to utilize that. I don't know. And I was just saying, what do you think of that? Do you think that could be a player in there?
Absolutely. These traits were either favorable or neutral throughout our ancestral past. So we need to keep in mind also that the goal of us as humans, we're animals at the end of the day, is to live old enough to hit puberty and to reproduce. And we did what the primal, most foundational, quote, purpose of life is. Maybe some people may argue that's not the purpose now in modern world, which, you know, whatever your philosophy is, that's fine. But we're living longer now, and our bodies wear down more now. We're exposed to more issues. So the body, we evolved just because you have these issues with vitamin D mutations and stuff. Can you hit puberty? Can you ovulate as a woman? Do you make viable sperm as a man? That's all that's required to pass on your genes and to keep the evolutionary train going. So, unless these genes are highly negative or detrimental to your health around that period of time, then you're going to keep reproducing. But you think about it now that we're living longer, the cracks start to show. And a lot of people don't understand. We have clear documentation of cancer, autoimmune diseases, allergies millions of years ago, like in our caveman ancestors, before we were even Homo sapiens. So people, evolution will get things wrong as well. For some reason, there's a random new mutation, and that individual, can't convert carbohydrates as well, and they die when there's a famine or something like that. Or we went the wrong way. This person got riddled with tumors, and when you think about this with certain rare genetics for pediatric cancers, right? Of course, lifestyle toxins, modern toxins play a role in that. But let's think about someone that's sensitive to adrenaline. How is that beneficial? Well, think about what life used to be like. Everyone would be, around a fire or this or that. And who would be the one that would be more hyper vigilant, and they hear a little rustle in the bushes and, what's that over there? I'm going to freak out. I'm going to tell everyone to be on guard. And you know what? 9 out of 10 times, it might just be a bird. Or Tyler, whoever your name is, Caveman Tyler, like, what are you talking about? But 1 out of 10 times, I'm making up random stats here, right? But maybe 1 out of 10 times, there's actually a threat. You're prepared. Everyone else has their spears up, right? And they're actually ready to fight it off. Versus if they got actually ambushed, everyone would die. And then none of those genes would be passed down, right? So there's hypotheses around it's the dopamine 4 receptor, so a specific receptor for dopamine, that is what drives someone to crave novelty. They call it the wanderlust gene. So if you're someone that loves travel, loves the novelty of exploring new things, that is highly related to that dopamine receptor. It fundamentally changes how your brain gets high off its own supply. So it changes how you detect dopamine in the brain, how it signals to your brain. So when we all, our initial ancestors came from Africa, who were most likely the first people to say, hey, this whole civilization we have here, this tribe we have, this is cool, but what's over on the other side of that mountain? No one ever goes there. I want to go check it out. The people with these dopamine 4 receptor mutations, people with ADHD, genetic tendencies. We know ADHD is highly genetic. I'm probably one of those people going to check it out. I always like checking
Same.
out new things, and I already know you're going to say that as well, right? So when you think about these drove the expansion of us, we know that when we migrated and got to certain areas of the world, if certain populations ate mostly carbohydrates, not only did evolution shape us, but over time, the humans in that area evolved to have more copies of their amylase gene so they can break down carbohydrates better because they spread out, they settled it. Some people said, all right, we're going to stop here. Other people kept going. The people that stayed here, if there were more carbohydrates, then over time, the people that can't process the carbohydrates as well, or they can, other people develop it better over time. When a famine hits, there's no carbohydrates. What do you think is going to happen there?
Hmm.
Or if you think about individuals like Eskimos or people in polar climates, they're eating all fat. They're pretty much keto. They're not growing crops there. So they'll have lower levels or copy numbers of that amylase gene. So could go on, but
Yeah.
absolutely the reason why we have these genes is again, they were beneficial or neutral. Because just because a gene, if it doesn't cause major issues, it may not be a benefit, but if it's not a detriment, then it could still get passed on.
Hmm.
And one final thing regarding this, mutations can happen in blocks on chromosomes, which means if one mutation happens, another mutation is much more likely to happen or sometimes guaranteed. This is called linkage disequilibrium. So just because you have a mutation in the vitamin D, maybe the gene next to it, maybe that got mutated. They both got mutated together. And
Hmm.
maybe that other gene was very beneficial for you, even though the vitamin D mutation maybe was neutral or maybe slightly negative. Because we can't think about genes as just isolation. We need to take out the overall net effect of all these things in total.
Okay. That's so interesting. I mean, some people do have, well, first, I really appreciate and like that idea of, why these genes might have taken place, why these variants might have flipped on and over time in our ancestors and all the different things. But also, some people do, and I think it's probably mostly because we've learned about it. The idea that, well, I don't do well because I have these variants. And it's like almost like an excuse because you said a minute ago, if if it's not debilitating, then it's fine. It's just there, like you just have it and it's neutral. But a lot of people blame, and we're going to get to this here in a second. A lot of people blame these variants on a lot of things. Like
Mhm.
they blame their imbalances on these variants. Like I wouldn't be in this situation if I didn't have this particular variant, right? Where I feel like 20 years ago, before we were digging into our genetic data, it was like we didn't hear about the MTHFR. We didn't hear
Mhm.
about these things because we didn't know about them. So we were having effects because of them, but we were able to still, like you said, we're still procreating, we're still ovulating, whatever. But I think it's just almost like we know too much now, kind of, in a way. I don't know,
Well,
but
I wouldn't say so much that we know too much. I just think with where the genetic space has went. I mean, I've been doing this full time as, a business, coming up on what, 3.5 years at this point. I've been doing this for around 8. The space has changed so much even in the past 2 years. Like now it's the new thing now. And it's the lack of proper interpretation and explanation to people. Because, I mean, even what you were sharing, right? When we work together, it's the thing that you mentioned helped you the most, and that
true.
was based on the genetics, right? So it's like I do believe that certain things can be to blame for genetics, and I even fall that into myself, right? My wife tells me, I'll be like, oh, I'm overwhelmed, stressed, this, that. I am fundamentally different than a lot of people due to these genetics I have, but she brings it, but keeps it real with me sometimes. She's like, yeah, sure, but like you can't just always retreat back to that all the time, right? You still have a
Right.
responsibility to try to, again, adjust your environment or adjust your situation that's more conducive. So I'm very sensitive to sulfur or sulfites. So if I have garlic, onions, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, I can feel headaches, brain fog, anxiety. And to be clear, it's not like I have a broccoli floret and I have a panic attack. It's not like that. But if I find out there was onions in something for an evening meal, I'll be like wired in the evening and not be able to fall asleep and kind of be in and out of sleep throughout the night from that. Now, what do I do with that? I make sure that I don't eat those foods regularly, right? So it's again, I'm adjusting my environment. So it's like I can't just eat all those foods and then complain to everybody, I'm anxious, I have brain fog, I have headaches, because I learned about myself and I'm trying to do my best to adjust my situation that's conducive for my wiring. That being said, I definitely hear what you're saying. A lot of people, it's human nature. They want to try
Yeah.
to blame and deflect, right? Like, so I think these things definitely do play a large role for a lot of people. But again, it's like, are you doing all the other, right things, right? Like,
Yes.
are you moving your body? And most people I work with, they're moving their bodies every day. They eat virtually all organic. They still don't feel well. And
Hmm.
that's why I believe, and it just makes sense when you really think about it, I'm selecting for people that probably have more significant variants that are affecting their health, because why aren't the foundational things working so well for them, right? Because a
Hmm.
lot of people say they're in good health, they don't take supplements, this or that, which also goes into how do you know what true health actually feels like, right? Each year, I'm like, I feel better and better. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I wasn't dialed in last year as you learn more, more, more.
I mean, we could have millions, right? We do have
Of
millions of
mutation?
variants.
Sorry,
Yeah,
variants. Yeah.
we
Yeah,
do,
white
right?
out, no mutations, variants. Yeah. No, yes, we all have millions of variants, but not every variant changes how your protein functions. So when you have that
Oh,
gene, it's a blueprint to make the protein, which is the workhorse. So, common misconception, people like, "Oh, I have the MTHFR gene." I'm like, "You and me both, sister, and every human being on the face of planet Earth. We all have the gene." The
hmm.
question is, do you have a variant? Which variant do you have? Um,
And how do you
so
feel, right? Because some people can have all of them
yes,
and they're fine.
yeah,
They can,
I've exactly. I've seen people with horrible mental health detox issues that have no MTHFR mutations. I've seen people that have a lot of mutations and they're doing fine, and I'm like, hey, like I'm really glad to hear about this, because it's not if this then that. If you have MTHFR, take your
yeah.
methylfolate supplement like riboflavin. It's a B vitamin that helps stabilize MTHFR. So like, I guess my point is, I don't want to go too deep into that, but my point being is a lot of genetics now is if you have this gene, take this supplement. You need to cross-reference so many other aspects. A lot of people know what the genetics mean nowadays, but how does that supplement or nutrient, what is the iceberg effect of that supplement? It's pretty
Mhm.
crazy when you think about it. How many people recommend supplements, whether you're a professional or not, that have literally zero training on how these supplements are actually working?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly guilty of that to some degree. Well, this brings us to the meat and potatoes of why I wanted you back on today. Um, so as you know, and we all have been told by the FDA that the estrogen, the black box warning has been taken off of the off HRT. So the
Mhm.
warning to let people know that there's potentially hidden risks using HRT for certain people has now been removed from based on the faulty WHI study that was done a while back. And my big argument was that I mean, that's great. I think they should have amended the warning. I don't think they should have removed it completely because, as we know, doctors get this carte blanche once they realize that there's no warning on a drug, and now they're just going to give it to anyone. And the argument from that I'm getting attacked with is, but it's starting a conversation which we haven't had with proper data for opening the healthcare conversation for women. And I'm like, how? How is that opening the conversation? Do you think that's going to add time to your session with your doctor just because they took the warning off? No, it's going to say, oh, well,
Yep.
now that there's no warning, I'm going to just give them everyone the standard. Here's a patch or gel of estrogen, and here's 100 milligrams of oral prometrium and maybe some testosterone. Good luck. And so I had a huge problem with it, and I posted online a lot over and over about it because I was really upset with it. And then you had this incredible comment. Tell us about that comment.
Yeah. So, and real quick, we'll kind of go back to, evolution and how we're living longer, right? It's like you think about like, why do women go through menopause, right? And I think the easiest way I like that my stance on it is, you know, women didn't get to menopausal age consistently until modern times, right? Throughout evolution, did nature, God, creator, whatever you want to, whatever your philosophy is on that, women weren't reliably reaching menopause until modern times. So again, it wasn't something that was a real, detriment, right? And I'm sure you'll agree with this. I do think that the proper hormone HRT for postmenopausal women, I think has incredible health benefits. And I do think most women should be doing some form of it, but we need to be more specific, right? So when you take estrogen, it gets metabolized. There's different phases of it. There's phase one, which is basically how you metabolize that estrogen molecule itself. There's phase two, how you further make it more water soluble to be removed out of the body. And they call phase three how well your elimination pathways are working. So, like, how well is the liver working? How well is the gallbladder working? All of these functions. So, there's the phase one, we'll call them 2, 4, and 16, three different forms of estrogen metabolites. Now, there is the CYP1A1 gene, the CYP1B1 gene, the CYP3A4 gene, three genes that help metabolize estrogen into these different metabolites. So I was talking about the CYP1B1, in the comment I made to you. We could touch on the other ones as well, but this is what metabolizes estrogen into the 4-OH form, we'll call it. And this is referred to the most highly genotoxic, meaning toxic to the DNA, and can cause, we know in a petri dish, you put that estrogen in there, it mutates the DNA and can cause cancer. Now, there are studies that show women with these mutations can have an increased risk for different forms of cancer. That's just as is. So I check this with clients I work with, and I'll educate particularly women around this. We can see these mutations correlate with PMS, breast sensitivity, because you're having more. It's not just how much estrogen you're getting. How are you breaking it down and getting it out of the body? So there actually are studies that are looking at these genetic mutations for estrogen and progesterone therapy. And literally, these studies have been out for years. There's a few studies that have shown and suggesting, the authors state that there's likely a significant risk with these genetic mutations when you're getting the estrogen.
Yeah. That's so one of the things that I feel like is the most, I don't, maybe criminal is a little too passionate, but that's how I feel. Which, because I'm that person, I have always favored the 16-OH pathway. So not the cancer pathway, but
Yep.
the 16-OH. And that is the, clotting pathway. That is the dense fibrocystic breast
Yeah,
pathway.
that's the most estrogenic, they call it. Like it has the most pro-estrogen effects, which has also been shown to promote the growth of, breast tissue or promote the growth of breast tumors, right? And it doesn't
Hmm.
guarantee every woman has these. I have these in my body too, right? But
Yeah.
it's about the amount that you're making.
Well, I had had a hard time understanding why, again, if God created these pathways, why did he? And if, unless there was a reason. And it makes sense that when a body is balanced, like when you're a healthy 25-year-old woman and you have really high levels of estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, and you need these pathways to serve different purposes and different functions. But when you have a lot of inflammation and you start to get I'm not going to say older. I'm going to say when imbalances start to show up more frequently, you have more
Hmm.
stressors,
Yep.
and these genetic mutations, genetic variants start getting sort of flipped on. Then we start to favor pathways. I always liken it to like it's just a it's like a quicker path. Even though it's a more dangerous path, it's a more efficient path that the body can use right now. So it uses that 16-OH or that 4-OH. But if it overuses it, the 4-OH causes DNA damage, and the 16-OH becomes this really difficult to deactivate, as you mentioned in phase two, and then to eliminate in phase three. And if you have gut problems, you're going to recycle that estrogen
Well,
back
that's what I was
into the
going to say
body.
too. And genetics aside, exactly how well is that working? Then the phase two, the methylation, glucuronidation, these things also play a role. Even the COMT gene, that's one that I talk about. Another one really linked to, the be more prone to be more sensitive, slow adrenaline breakdown, also slow phase two detoxification. So you can have someone that makes more of the 4-OH genetically and someone that clears the 4-OH more slowly. So these studies, they rarely look at multiple genes in the same pathway. And that's why when people say, oh, a study came out, this gene isn't linked to this issue, I'm like, well, there's more than meets the eye behind these studies, right? How are all these coming into play? Because even just general liver health, genetics aside, right? Like, how strong is your liver? That can decrease as you age. That can promote more recirculation of these metabolites.
hmm That's so true. And it's this concept that okay, we remove the warning and so it's safe for everyone. And
Yeah.
that will never ever ever be true. So my argument is not about the warning and everything needs a warning. I'm not like, hey, let's regulate the hell out of everything. That's not where I'm coming from. Where I'm coming from is the idea that this is going to give medical doctors this idea that it's safe. And they're already not doing the
Yeah.
testings that you and I are talking
Well,
about.
that's the tough part too, because I have an ideal of what I think is the right way to do things, but then you got to think about it. Who's going to be paying for these tests, right? And I wish my type of work was covered by insurance, but they need so much years and decades. Science moves fast, but it also moves slow. So it's
Mhm.
like even MTHFR, there's a lot of data that it is important for many aspects of health, but you're rarely going to get insurance to cover testing for that. So you see what I'm saying? It's like, it's great to
Sure.
say they're not running the tests, but who's going to pay for those tests, right? Even if they are helpful for a certain percentage of people, that also requires the studies to be structured properly. So again, if you ran that study, people that make it easily and break it down more slowly, I think you would then see those people much higher risk, right? But again, you need to have that study done in the first place to
Right.
justify getting covered by insurance. It's not the
Well,
doctors, it's the system.
instead of, well, the doctors can advocate for this. I mean, the doctors are the ones who advocated and then had Robert Kennedy Jr. Um, to kind of make the move to get it removed from the FDA. And you know who the doctors are? They're these famous influencer doctors like Dr. Haver and people who are on TikTok,
Hmm.
and they're giving advice to people about getting the Mirena coil if you're in menopause, or you're in perimenopause to stop bleeding. And I think it's just it's like the warning. So yes, I agree with you about who's going to pay for it. But I think removing the warning makes it sound like it's safe.
Yeah.
And so it's just I feel like it should have been amended and they should start giving the message of, we need practitioners who are willing to do individual customize, personalize, I should say, testing. Now, maybe we could start with simple things like a comprehensive thyroid lab instead of just TSH, or we could start with, a 24-hour urine lab. I mean, where we can see the metabolic pathways that are being used, we can see what they favor and say, oh, looking at your medical, I do that on Facebook. I can look at somebody's Dutch test or look at somebody's 24-hour urine or blood spot. And I hear that they've been suffering since they got off the birth control pill when they were 38. And I can tell you right now, they're recycling their estrogen just because I'm aware. Now, I'm not going to prescribe them drugs, but I can certainly say, look, if you get on estrogen, you might do what you did with estrogen when you were, back in the day. It's likely that and so it's that kind of thing. It's like, if you go get certified to scuba dive, or you go learn how to fly a plane, the safety mechanism, the safety process protocol that's in place before you can lift that plane off the ground is crazy. And why aren't we doing that too? Like, why aren't we being that specific when it comes to our bodies? We know that estrogen is mitogenic. We know because, like you said, you put it in a petri dish, or we also know that in order to stop certain hormonal cancers, they give you what? Estrogen blockers. Why would they give you estrogen blockers if estrogen is so safe?
Well, and that's going back to like the evidence base. It's like it seems like a no-brainer, right? But the way the medical system is set up is
system.
They need to. I'm totally with you. This is read between. Okay, if we block estrogen, it helps but they need to see many, many studies and meta-analyses showing the exact thing. Like the example I like to give is, I think maybe the last year or two, a study came out that was showing that eating ultra processed foods is linked to depression. People in our space have known this for a long time, but many, many years ago, we've had studies that show ultra processed foods cause inflammation. Cool. Other studies have shown, we're starting to see that brain inflammation causes depression and mood issues. Okay. People like you and I, we don't need to wait for this new study to come out to connect the dots. If A causes B, proven, and B causes C, proven, our brains will look and say, all right, so A causes B, B causes C, so A causes C. But that's not how the scientific method works with the medical system, as much as I would like for it to, right? And that's kind of what's going on here.
So, the WHI, the Women's Health Initiative, it had so many flaws, not all flaws, but it had a lot of flaws. But they didn't then redo it, right? They didn't say, okay, women are more than half our population. Why don't we go ahead and before we've debunked it, why don't we redo it? And let's use BHRT and, plant-based estrogens, if you will, and whatever, and redo this robust study so that we can show, hey, we did it this way, and we just redid it to show you the new data. Instead, they're not doing that. There's never been a double-blind crossover study, clinical study done in the same way that the WHI did their study. So instead, they're just going off these random, mouse models and things like this. It's weird to me. That doesn't seem scientific to me at all.
I mean, it makes me wonder. There's probably a lack of financial incentive. Like
that's
I would like
wild because
but then when I think that's at first glance, but I'm just trying to think. You think there is a financial incentive because I guess can you patent those other forms of right? I'm just trying to think that may not be the actual reason, right? But I'm just trying to think as much as we think we know, there's so much underneath how the system. I guess my point is as much as my brain like, oh, this is how it should be. I'm also getting more aware of all these other confounding variables and factors and logistical things that are likely part of the rope factor, but how much is of that versus a lack of financial incentive, right? And no one really knows that. No one
Right.
human really knows that. And this is where, you have the holistic side versus, whether it's the cholesterol or the seed oils, or you have this completely polarizing of very smart people on either side that are credentialed, talking about these things. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just so interesting to me how opposing views can be on things. But I mean, my answer to a lot of these things is it all depends on the person at the end of the day.
It does. That's true. But
I like people talk about, I get asked about carnivore diets a lot. And I don't think any of those restrictive diets make sense long term for people, but it can help people. But are you someone that is more prone to higher LDL and heart issues and weight gain from more saturated fat? We have
right.
data. We know this. Certain variants, people that have more saturated fat, they gain more weight. They have higher LDL levels. So are you that person or are you not? So it's like each polarizing side, right? You have more on the
Yeah.
conventional side, cardiologists saying you really shouldn't eat red meat, some of the more extreme side. Then you have people saying eat steak every single meal. An LDL of 400 doesn't really matter. They can be helpful for certain people, yet equally as harmful for other people because there's that lack of nuance.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the moral to the story here is that there is no one size fits all. And the more you know about your body, the more you're
Yep.
going to be ahead of the game when it comes to your health and trying and supplementing and taking medications and doing cleanses and things. You're gonna be like, oh no, yeah, that's not something I should be doing. Um, And I have, I always put my tinfoil hat on when it comes to certain things. And when I follow the money with HRT, you can't patent delivery methods of progesterone because, as you know, progesterone's molecule is so much larger than estrogen. So if I wanted a progesterone patch, it would be the size of my back compared
Mm.
to, an estrogen patch. And there's no method of delivery with progesterone that's a good money model. There's no ROI on that. And so I just think that they made this decision to just, push on the estrogen, take away the warnings. And
So you're saying almost like incentivize more towards estrogen to fix everything instead and making money that way
I
versus
mean,
the lower margin progesterone.
I've got my control group, and I know it's not that scientific in terms of, it's all anecdotal stuff, but I've got, almost 70,000 people in my estrogen dominance support group now.
Hmm.
And the conversation that has shifted, even just since the warning was removed, let alone in the last like 10 years or so, to see the women going from their doctors not even mentioning hormones to them getting estrogen with nothing else,
Yeah.
to then getting estrogen with a little bit of progesterone and lots of testosterone going on, to now women literally coming in and saying, I'm having this estrogenic symptoms, and then giving the same model prescription, what they've all been on. The conversation has dramatically changed. So I know, and then the marketing speak. It's local estrogen, estriol. It's just estrogen on the vaginal tissue. It stays local, and that's just not true
Hmm.
because it's going to eventually go through second pass at the liver, no matter
Hmm.
what.
Hmm.
Otherwise,
Hmm.
how does it work at all?
Exactly. It's just
And
perpetual estrogen.
yeah, and so this is, and all these influencer doctors saying, "Oh, it's local. Don't listen to them. It's local. It's just local. It's fine." And someone like
I'll be
me,
honest, it kind of reminds me of, it's ironic that on the holistic side, it makes me think of conventional on with the COVID vaccine. Like, oh, it's the spike. You make the spike protein, it goes away. Just so ironic. Both sides do these things with things that they believe in, right? Doesn't mean necessarily it's malicious, right? But just ironic. There's so much parallels between conventional and holistic that people aren't really like aware of, right?
yeah. I mean, I'm all down for, I dabble in cyproheptadine and I experiment with, because of my histamine stuff. And I don't have a problem with the medical model. And I shouldn't say that. I don't have a problem with pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
And so I'm not like super holistic and against it.
Yeah.
I'm just all for what you described earlier, which is we're
Yeah.
all unique and different. And um, so let's get to, I know you've got something coming up, but let's get to the melatonin. So
Yeah.
this was so interesting to me. I've got a few questions about melatonin. So I know a lot of women, including myself, I love melatonin and
Me
I
too.
always have. My mentor used to he had a study that I saw with my own eyes, and then I can't find it now. And it was an Italian doctor who took these two sisters. Do you know? Have you heard of this? They're twin sisters,
I don't think so.
and he took these two twin sisters and started them on melatonin in their like early 20s, late teens. Started one on really high dose, like 25 milligrams or something insane.
Mhm.
And then the other one got no melatonin. And then over because he was convinced it was the anti-aging molecule, the anti-aging hormone. And he took pictures of them over the years. And the last photos, the woman that was not on melatonin looked like the other one's mother. She looked
Mm.
so much older. And so for a long time, I was taking a lot, especially Dr. Marshall's Premier Research Labs melatonin at the time was fermented and it was just amazing. And I was taking like an entire milliliter, a whole
Hmm.
dropper full of that every night.
How many milligrams was that?
I think it was probably like 25. And
Wow.
I
And were you
was
waking up groggy?
in the beginning I would take it like an hour before bedtime.
Got it.
I was waking up groggy at sometimes. I was having crazy dreams. I was having all this stuff. But it was the most, I don't know if GABAergic is appropriate to this particular hormone, but it made me feel so GABA. It got me off that adrenaline track
Hmm.
and so I did that for a long time. And I don't know, maybe that's why I look younger than you think. But I stopped doing that. And now I take little bits and then I go through phases where I don't take it at all. But a lot of women, and I experienced this too, notice that it downregulated libido big time. Not even just at high doses. I'm talking about just at even normal doses.
Hmm.
What do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah. So, first off, I'm a big advocate for melatonin. I've been taking it every night for years. I don't plan on stopping. Personally, I break it down very slowly genetically. So like my wife, she could take 5 times the dosage I do. She wakes up fine. So the genetics play a role. We could touch more on the genetics, but so there's data with people talk about, can melatonin affect, puberty onset? That's been, people talk about that, people hear about it. And you look at it does appear to have roles on FSH and LH. In animal studies, it's been shown to delay puberty onset. But when we look at human studies, young children taking it for several months to a couple of years, there hasn't been any definitive studies showing, this definitely does that. A recent review came out, I think, in March. They did a couple different statistical analyses, and there were a couple thousand kids involved with it, male and female. And one of the statistical analyses was showing that I think in around 7% of the individuals, it may possibly have somewhat of an effect. But
Okay.
the other analyses they did showed no effect in any of them. So
Interesting.
um, there is some data showing that your melatonin levels that you have naturally can also affect the time of puberty onset. So again, my brain working off patterns here. I have issues. So my PER2 and clock genes, these are what tell your cells what time it is to release melatonin at night. I have mutations there. I've been a night owl my whole life. These mutations are linked to insomnia, ADHD, depression, poor blood sugar regulation. Um, Now, also, my melatonin receptors can't detect melatonin as well. So melatonin, completely changed my life with that. So it's about trying to understanding the individual, the dosage that they're taking, the delivery form. I mean, oral pills maybe have 10, 15% bioavailability. I like the
Really?
sublingual. I use Life Extension liquid one. I have no affiliation with them or anything, just the one that I've been utilizing. I really love that one under the tongue for absorption. But, I haven't, I know in your community you have a much higher sample size of, women to talk to about this. I personally haven't had that come up, but based on the mechanism, and this is why mechanisms are important. You can't just go base off all these randomized control trials, right? If there is data, it can affect FSH and LH. It's up for debate if it can affect puberty in children. I personally think occasional usage isn't an issue for children. It makes sense that I could see that playing a role in the libido. But again, are they going to make a study, a properly controlled study to check libido in women? I don't think we
Never.
can hold our breath on that.
Never. Okay. So, why do people with the CYP1A2 slow variant struggle with even tiny doses of melatonin? Is that a, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's literally how you are metabolizing it and breaking it down. So you need to take other aspects into account as well, right? So of course, I mentioned the dosing. I mentioned the yes, I said the dosing, the individual, and they're just going to be hardwired to not process that quite as well. So I know it's kind of like a straightforward answer, but it's
Makes
ironic
sense.
too. That's the same gene that metabolizes caffeine. So I'm very sensitive to melatonin. I'm also very sensitive to caffeine. So if you think
Huh.
about this, you also need to think about, all right, well, if someone is having caffeine and they already metabolize that more slowly, if you have caffeine in the morning, that's still going to be competing for metabolism of melatonin later at night. So things I think about, it's like, all right, well, are there other things in there that are also competing for that? I believe I believe it's sulforaphane. I could be wrong with that. Also, I believe it can block that gene as well. So that protein as well. So just all of these little factors that
Wow.
there's not studies to show every little less interaction here, but just
Yeah.
looking at that after working with people, these are factors that can play a role. But back to the anti-aging, melatonin is the most powerful antioxidant in the body. It is a broad spectrum antioxidant. When you compare it to things like vitamin C, vitamin E, glutathione, there are so many different types of reactive toxic. We don't have to go into all the different species and stuff, but it covers so many other types of pro-oxidants in the body that these other antioxidants don't really help with. They do it much more weakly or not at all. So
Hmm.
people say glutathione's the master antioxidant. I think melatonin is the master antioxidant in the body. And our body, it's not just made for sleep. Studies have recently shown that we make melatonin in our mitochondria as well. We have a lot of melatonin in our mitochondria to act as the master antioxidant buffer system. And it's been shown when you supplement with melatonin, it elevates your blood levels a lot higher than sleep normally does, obviously, right? But that's why it gets to your brain. It binds these melatonin receptors. You get sleepy, but you can also uptake some of that into your mitochondria and get them into the mitochondria as well. So, um, I
Hmm.
so you see what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
Like melatonin, I think it's one of the most wrongly demonized supplements, and dosages play a role as well, right? Like I've gone up to 100 to 200 milligrams for people I've worked with long COVID or really bad mitochondrial issues, not long term. I'm not really recommending anyone tries that. Ironically, people say you can get actually a stimulant effect at that high of dosages. Because I'd be like, how do you ever wake up? They're like, no, I take it in the morning. And we realize it can actually help stimulate them, which is kind of ironic when you think about it. But you got to think about what's physiologically relevant.
Hmm. That's so interesting. So when people don't need it, like I remember when I started doing the Dutch and looking at people's Dutch tests, and I could see their melatonin, and they would say, I have terrible insomnia. And it would show that their excretion of melatonin was quite high. And so I was like, I don't think you're having a deficiency in melatonin. And they're like, no wonder, because I'm taking melatonin and it doesn't help. So can you have like adequate production of melatonin and then take melatonin? What does that do to you? Can you just do you just excrete it?
Yeah. So, one thing to think about with that, I've seen that as well with individuals, but if we look at the receptors mutations, variants, they don't change your levels of melatonin or your metabolism or excretion. It changes how your cells detect melatonin and respond to it. So these have been studied. They're linked to, guess what? All the same stuff that those clock mutations are linked to. We need to think in terms of pathways. Whether you don't release enough melatonin, whether you don't make it, whether you break it down faster, whether you can't detect it, the end result is decreased melatonin signaling, right? In the
Mm.
body overall. So, and that's why these receptor mutations, variants, geez, are so
I'm gonna,
important because they fundamentally change how you interpret labs. Because it doesn't matter what's circulating in your body, it matters how well your body, your cells respond to what's actually circulating. So, but I'm totally with you. At the same point, I'm totally with you that it's not. People say, I tried melatonin, I worked up dosage, it didn't work, didn't do anything. Well, that may not be your issue. There's a million and one other things
right.
involved with sleep other than just, and that's people just try to sledgehammer melatonin. Oh, I'm taking 20 milligrams, this, that. And I'm not saying that's inherently bad. Again, there can be some benefits antioxidant wise, but some people, their sleep can get worse the higher dosages they go. More is not always better. So if someone already has adequate melatonin, they take more melatonin, what happens? I mean, you're going to be excreting it, but it can go so nuanced into, okay, well, what are the levels in your brain for the pineal gland for sleep versus in all your mitochondria for antioxidant effects, right? Can you have the brain is good for the sleep, but the antioxidant levels are lower? This is where it can get so
Interesting.
nitty gritty. We're not exactly sure of that. Melatonin
That's
is,
interesting because
yeah,
like glutathione is a like a sulfur compound, isn't it? Like the way
correct.
that it becomes an antioxidant, the way it takes out the trash is by, I don't know, like adding a sulfur compound to the
So
toxins and eliminating it.
glutathione is made from cysteine, a sulfur-containing amino acid. That's why the N-acetylcysteine,
Hmm.
NAC, really common supplement for that. So you're right. Yes, it is
Precursor.
rich in sulfur, and it connects itself to these bad things, helps
So
remove
how
them,
does
and can get recycled.
melatonin do that as a hormone? What action does it have? Does you said it binds to receptors of other
Well,
things?
so that's for sleep, right?
Okay.
So then, but it has direct scavenging properties for
Really?
these antioxidants in a I don't go too deep into like the biochemistry of that, but it does have direct antioxidant capabilities by being able to bind to and neutralize these free radicals or other
Interesting.
things. And what's interesting too is, you know, melatonin also helps upregulate glutathione production. It also can help regulate nitric oxide. So it's like this trifecta. It's not just melatonin itself, too. How
Hmm.
many of the benefits of melatonin are downstream for other things as well? And this is where I can get so nitty gritty, all these different things, right? And
Yeah.
it's
Well, I want to, I'm going to wrap it up, but I want to ask you this before I wrap it up
yeah,
and all that stuff, because I know it can be a lot for people to hear. It's like, it just seems like so much, but
yeah.
I will wrap this up. But I first want to ask you, I don't know if you know the position of Dr. Ray Peat on melatonin and what the pro metabolic community, which I happen to love and consider myself a part of, but I don't know how I feel about this. So Dr. Peat saw melatonin as more of a stress darkness hormone than a sleep hormone. From your perspective, do any genetic pathways support or contradict his view? Had you heard that?
I haven't heard that.
He
I don't
he
follow him
he
super
thinks
closely, but I've seen some stuff he says that seems very, very absolute with things. Um, I think you might have said you never want to raise serotonin, you never want to do this, you never.
Yeah,
I
you
think
said
you
that.
should not, you should never be hearing never. You should never take vitamin D. It's just, it's ironic that, don't take melatonin, it's a hormone. Don't take vitamin D, it's a hormone. Yet a lot of those individuals, they go on estrogen, they go on testosterone. Why do we go on these things?
Or even
Because
magnesium. They take
well, I'm saying,
supplements.
I'm saying that's not a hormone. I'm saying we say vitamin D and melatonin are hormones. Don't
Right.
take them. Your body makes
Don't
them.
mess with them. Don't mess
But
with your
why
hormones.
are we allowed to mess with our sex hormones? What is the difference here? Oh, because you stopped making them as well? Well, what happens as we age? Melatonin production goes down. So why doesn't that logic apply to these same things? Regarding the
Hmm.
darkness stress hormone, I'm not really like familiar with that. There's just so much data showing that melatonin is beneficial, even for things like, septic shock and like newborns look at them high doses of melatonin, right? So
Wow.
so there's a lot
Okay.
of, yeah, I'm not super familiar, with that stance. I just think that intuitively here, we also need to remember I mentioned these genetic mutations that can make your brain not detect or release as much melatonin. Then we got to remember, genetics aside, lifestyle. We I believe, genetics aside, I think virtually no one in our modern world today is producing sufficient melatonin because of the phones we have, because of the stress, because of, the toxic foods or this, all these lifestyle factors that, yeah, I wear my blue blockers every night. They changed my life. Those melatonin receptors are in your eyes. So people with these mutations usually do better with blue blockers. But it's still not a perfect system. So
Hmm.
it's like we have our genetics pulling us away from optimal melatonin. We have a million and one lifestyle things in our modern world pulling us away from melatonin. So, how many people are actually producing sufficient melatonin each evening? This is why I'm a big proponent. I think everyone should try supplementing with maybe zero point 0.3 to half. We make roughly around zero point 0.3 milligrams per night. So maybe half a milligram of some liquid sublingual melatonin and see how you respond. If you don't feel
Mm.
anything, try going up to a couple of milligrams, right? Like if you don't feel anything on 2 or 3 milligrams, just because you go up to 25 and sleep, it doesn't mean that the melatonin was the issue. You could be potentially, band-aiding, something else. But I don't know. So talk to me a little bit more about that. So saying that
Yeah.
it's a nocturnal hormone, but now it's a stress hormone?
Yeah. I mean, that's just something that I hear a lot when I recommend, because there's a lot of repeat people in my
Yeah.
group. So when I mention melatonin, or when someone talks about melatonin, you always get these Peters who come in and say, oh,
Hmm.
it's a stress hormone. But I feel like if it was, I would have a lot more of it because I certainly
Well,
am.
well, think about this. If melatonin gets produced more under oxidative stress or inflammatory stress, wouldn't it be an anti-stress nutrient, an
Yeah.
anti-stress hormone?
Well, that's what I call cortisol. People are like, cortisol is a stress hormone. I'm like, well, when does it come into play? Well, when I'm under stress. Well, yeah, but it's not trying to kill you. It's trying to save you. It's trying to put out a fire. So shouldn't it be called an anti-stress hormone? I mean, yeah, you don't want to
Oh,
target the abundance of it, but
yeah, I hear what you're saying there. The chronic elevation, that's the real issue,
right,
right? But I mean,
right.
I hear what you're saying there. You're not, yeah, I can see the general population misconstruing that at face value, right? Like, oh, it's an
Yeah.
ant, like, oh, I don't need to care about my elevated cortisol, right? But you are right. It is a signal. It's trying to prepare the body to respond better to
Yeah.
that stress,
Well,
right?
people will always say, how do I lower my cortisol? And I always say, well, why don't we find out why your cortisol is elevated first?
Well,
You know?
cortisol gets elevated from adrenaline spikes, right? So it's again, adrenaline, that's the
So,
more short term.
yeah.
So yeah, I I feel like it could be too absolute. Like I've seen a lot
Yeah.
of people come to me, they gained 35 pounds on the pro metabolic repeat diet because
I gained a lot of weight.
why are you saying everyone needs to be high carbohydrate when we literally have studies that show certain genetics make people respond more poorly, more higher risk of diabetes, higher weight gain. when they
Well,
have high carbohydrates.
I think it's taken out of context like so much of everything online is. I don't think Ray Pete was never like you have to do this and this is how you should
That's
live
fair.
like
Okay. I
this.
think a lot of what I see are people that quote him, right?
Yeah.
So that's got it.
No, I mean I
Because
gained a
so
lot
some of
of
the stuff
weight.
I've heard from him makes a lot of sense intuitively. It's just and all these different gurus, right? I think they're right and wrong for certain people once again, and it's just adding that level of nuance. Like I know
Yeah.
what is it? I think the Morley Robbins root cause protocol, like outright just demonizes to
Vitamin D.
oblivion any vitamin D. I've tried to talk polite. I gotten blocked from all. I'm trying to politely say, hey, I'd love to talk to you about these genetic factors that some people need, not just a vitamin D supplement. They may need a special pre-activated form of vitamin D, but
That
to
was
me,
the
that's
other
an echo
thing that
chamber.
saved
I
my
got blocked
life.
right away by being
Yeah.
so. I'm not here. I'm not here to try and prove you wrong. I'm saying everything people say around no melatonin or no vitamin D or that can be true, but there's all this other nuance that we know plays a role that
Yeah.
you just coincidentally happen to just turn the other eye and block and ignore because that would threaten your whole brand and you can't add nuance because your audience may think that you're I don't know, you're flip-flopping.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said that because in my group, if you asked anybody, if you haven't already heard, I'm this crazy person who likes to demonize estrogen. Like that's what I do. But I don't, In fact, my whole thing is like balance. And
Yep.
can we talk about the nuance between everyone when it comes to hormones? And that never gets discussed. But yeah,
And also
I
sadly, though, those types of clips rarely get shared too. It's
yeah,
all the it's all the things taken out of context, the this, the that,
yeah.
yeah.
And now that I'm getting a lot more traction, I mean the attacks, it's crazy. People just go on to somebody's random page, mine, they don't know who I am, they don't know anything about me, and then they have so much to say about how crazy and off the rails I am and how I'm not a doctor and what am I talking about? And it's just funny how people waste their time with stuff they don't agree with. It's like just
Hmm.
scroll away. But because I said I gained weight on the pro metabolic diet, I need to say why. I think a lot of people they've trained their bodies away from utilizing glucose well, their livers away from that. And so when they introduce carbohydrates, like I started drinking milk again and I gained weight so fast and I just needed to go slower with it all. And so when I finally balanced my macros, it was fine. I
Hmm.
lost the
Hmm.
weight.
Yeah.
But anyway, this whole thing sounds a lot like to a lot of people listening, they might get very overwhelmed with what we're talking about. Like I get a lot of new people listening all the time. And it's like, oh my God, well, he's saying that I don't, maybe I should take melatonin, but maybe I shouldn't. And I think the moral of the story is, and the reason why I really respect you so much is because what you do is work so carefully with this customized protocol for people, which is what our healthcare is lacking. You mentioned the vitamin D again. I mean, I was severely anemic and had to have a blood transfusion. I was so sick. This was the height of my illness. And Morley Robbins was desperately trying to convince me not to take vitamin D and not to get the blood transfusion and the infusions and do the protocol, which helped me a lot. But it wasn't everything for me. I had to customize, ultimately find out from you years later that the vitamin D is not helping me anyway because I have this variant that I
Hmm.
need to have calcifediol.
If you guys listening, we have vitamin D3 that gets needs to be turned into 25D. That needs to be converted. Everyone takes this form, but this is what's on blood work. So this can be a gene does this, a protein, it could be mutated in people. You're one of those people, I'm one of those people. And that's just a clear example. That one nutrient I've seen completely change people's lives because throughout their entire life, they've never been able to activate vitamin D,
Hmm.
whether you make it from sunlight or food or normal supplement. So we're not going to go on a tangent into that, but just to say like that just epitomizes it's not always that easy, like that one thing for everyone, right? But it just epitomizes like if your body literally can barely convert vitamin D, And then you have someone telling you no one should take vitamin D. I just don't I don't see any way how any people that outright demonize something like that, have they actually read this data, or why do they think the data is just completely useless, right? But
Right.
I'm
But it
so glad that it has such a good
gaslights.
effect on you.
Yeah, it gaslights so many people like myself, you know, but also there's a huge component to this where it's like it once you know it, the knowledge, once you learn it, it just it's that's what's transformative. And I would say the huge component is that I had been doing the work. I had
Yep.
already been working on my gut health and I had already been doing all the things. And so by the time I met you, it was that easy for me,
Yes.
you know?
Well, and again, it just shows too, like you can do all the other, call it harder, all the other things. You can do all the biohacks, the peptides, the this, the that, but if you can't create vitamin D properly, right?
You're
So it's like
screwed.
the order of operations here.
Exactly. I mean, that was me my whole life, and it's crazy because you have all these viruses, and every time the wind blew, I would get sick. The
Yep.
seasons change, and it's like, what's wrong with me? I'm so weak and broken. And it wasn't. I just wasn't getting the right kind of vitamin D. It was incredible, and I think that you're incredible, and I think
Well,
that
thank you.
yeah, and I wish you all the best with whatever's next for you, and I think it's going to be bigger than you realize. You just have to get out of your way.
Yeah. Working on
And
it. Again, that's the slow adrenaline clearance, right?
same with me.
The overthinking, right?
Same here. That's why I can say that to you. So I appreciate you, and I'll have you back again, and we'll dig deeper into MTHFR. Just kidding.
Would love it. No, I mean we can. I love it. Yeah. I mean, yeah, always an absolutely great time chatting with you and you guys listening, I know a little parts you on a little tangent to put on our like nerd hats and went a little bit deep with stuff, but at the end of the day, it's learning to understand your own body better. These holistic doctors on Instagram, these supplement influencers on TikTok, they don't know your unique body. And, these broad brushstrokes, the foundational pillars do help a lot of people, but it just breaks my heart how many people I've worked with that they're scared of even the word vitamin D supplement. Like
Mhm.
they're living with a crazy deficiency and they're convinced that that's, normal. You're allowed to try these things out. Like there's really no supplement out there you take for a couple of weeks is going to completely derail your health. I mean,
Mhm.
worst case scenario, you feel a little bit worse, but have fun and explore with these things, but you want to be intentional and understand, okay, like I'm taking this, what if I don't feel good, what could that feel like? But you're not going to die from calcification from a month of taking vitamin D. Just see how you feel at higher blood levels. And I just like going by a lot of times how someone's feeling because like, oh, well, you don't want to do that. You don't know what's going to happen in, 30 years. I'm like, sure, kind of. But if someone feels the best they felt in years on these things, as long as you're monitoring your bloods and stuff, like there's always some reason that maybe not to do something. But
Right.
these things are over the counter for a reason. They're not going to make you drop dead. I mean, that's me also someone that is vocal on how they can mess you up, but that's exactly why I try to make content around these things to help you guys, the listeners, make more informed health decisions because a lot of people with their branding, this, that, they're fixed in a certain dogmatic way that helps some people. Some people don't need the vitamin D. Some people feel worse for XYZ, right? But just take anything from any of these gurus that are kind of this is the way, always. If they use the word always or never, you really just want to take that with a grain of salt because it's probably a marketing tactic.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's my way or the highway, and that's never good. Well, I will link your survival guide to supplements in our show notes, and we'll have you back soon.
Awesome.
Okay, friends, I'll tell you how this goes. I'm not selling it. I'm not making any money on that. In fact, I'm spending money. But yeah, reach out to Dr. Tyler Pansner. His information is in the show notes. And please, guys, please, at the very least, take my Detox Essentials mini course. And if you have the money, then take the advanced course, which is 30% off. So that's a really good deal. We have a lot of people taking it. I'm going to do a live in the new year because we have a special specific Facebook group just for the advanced detox essentials. And we're going to do a live in there. And we're also going to, you can share your labs in that group, in that private Facebook group. You can ask questions. It's just a much different, more intimate setting than the estrogen dominance group, which is going to be at 70,000 members here in a minute. And it's harder to be intimate in that group. So friends, I will talk to you soon.